David, welcome.
Thank you, Michael. Pleasure to be with you here today.
It's great to have you here, David. So, for those who don't know, David Smyth is the Executive Vice President at GPM Global. And GPM here stands for Green Project Management. We'll hear more about that term later, I'm sure. David is a leading advocate for sustainable regeneration, having worked for 20 years in business development, management consulting, and product development. His experience includes portfolio and project management in both the public and the private sectors, and in a range of industries that include energy, healthcare, logistics, and aerospace and defence. He has championed new products for GPM and is one of the co-authors of its recent publication, Sustainable Project Management, the GPM Practice Guide. And that's why I wanted to speak with you today, David, about sustainable project management and the work that GPM is doing. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it was really looking forward to the discussion.
Excellent. So before we get really properly into the discussion, let's start by defining terms. What do you mean when you talk about sustainable project management and green project management and the variety of terms that we hear all around that topic?
It's an interesting question, and allow me to sort of start with where we came from. GPM, or Green Project Management Global, has been around for about 15 years. So we're sort of in our rowdy teenage years now. And when we started, the sort of nom de jour, or the trend in the environmental discussions, was very much using the word green. And we've always been in a position where we're trying to meet people where they are. So it was green for a long time. The term global warming was there for a long time, then climate change, and then sustainability. And now we're moving into regeneration. So if we were to rename ourselves now, I don't actually think we'd use the word green project management. We would be calling ourselves sustainable project management, or at least using that term, which, as you said, is one of the terms that we use kind of interchangeably. But you're right, we need to clearly define where that came from. So the idea between green project management, or as we're referring to it now as sustainable project management, really came from building on some of the traditional methods and concepts of project management. If we look at, the original PMBOK or PMI, we started with time, cost, and scope. Mm-hmm. Some of the things they didn't really talk about were things that, like Prince 2 came in to talk about in a great way and started combining them, was risk, value, and benefits. Mm-hmm. What we've built with our P5 standard and what we're integrating, what we're talking about with sustainable project management, is taking time, cost, scope, and risk, value, benefits, and then adding John Elkington's theory. John Elkington, for those who don't know, is really known as the father of sustainability, and he introduced the triple bottom line of people, planet, and prosperity. So our P5 standard is wrapping all of this together and looking at every aspect of a project from the people, planet, and prosperity perspectives, but also looking at it from a product perspective. So we mean the entire life cycle. Like, for example, you hear a lot about circular economy. Donut Economics is a great book for those of you who may be interested, by Kate Rayworth. It's a very, very good book that explains sort of a lot of these concepts, and it's great for younger people to be able to integrate their thinking towards it. And integrating those into the product, but also the process. And when we say the process, we mean the portfolio management or the project management. So all that a long-winded way to say we're going more than just green, which is a fairly narrow term. We're talking about sustainability as a whole, and these days even talking about regeneration, which is in the new guide that you referred to. Because sustainability, when we're talking about things like the UN SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, sustainability means just sustaining where we are. We're already too late. We've already caused a lot of damage. So we need to get into a situation where we're regenerating nature, where all of the poisoned soil through large agricultural poor practices, we need to regenerate that soil. We need to help build the coral reefs again, because we have natural carbon sinks that have just been degraded to the point that they're just not functioning as well as they could. By taking nature and natural design into our project management and processes, we can help alleviate much of the damage that has been done by climate change. So not just being where we are, but alleviating and remedying many of the mistakes we've made previously from a take, waste perspective of sort of long traditional project management.
Yeah, and I guess, reading through the book that you've co-authored recently, it seems to me it's not just climate change; it's all the elements of the what we are doing to our planet and how we need to restore it. So, from biodiversity to pollution and all of that. And I think a nice way to kind of tie all this together, you used the term UN Sustainable Development Goals a moment ago. So I wonder if you could just say a little bit about that while I put the goals on screen for people, about the context and what that means and how you use it in the standard.
Okay, so the UN SDGs, they started in around 2000 with the Millennial Development Goals, and they expanded from there to the current 17 Sustainable Development Goals we have. So things like reducing poverty, responsible consumption, things like that. And GPM was actually involved in the original writing of the SDGs. The SDGs have been wonderful as far as drawing attention to the needs of the environmental and biodiversity globally. Some of the things that these SDGs do not do, however, is address the root problems of the goals themselves. So, for example, if you take ending or no poverty, it doesn't really deal with what is leading and to the global poverty issues in the first place. So we've already spoken about degradation of soil, which is rendering a lot of farmland unused. One of the things that we encourage and we take people, so we encourage people in the P5 standard to look at is the local economic impact of your product and projects. Are you paying livable wages in developing countries, the global south, as is being referred to? We're typically not paying livable wages. So in your projects, how do you account for that? So we're looking at root causes, and through the 49 elements of the P5 standard, when you're going through your project and trying to address with senior stakeholders and senior sponsors and management, are you including all of these criteria, such as dealing with indigenous peoples? For example, I'm in Canada, so oil and gas is our single biggest sector. And in Alberta, there are a lot of pipelines that move through indigenous land. Are we consulting with those people? Are we factoring them into potential jobs that are created through renewable energy sources? That's one way to look at just one of the SDGs in ending poverty. And if you go through our P5 standard, we've actually linked each of the elements to their corresponding SDGs. So you can, within your project management practices or portfolio management practice, you can sort of link and describe to your companies what you are actually doing to link to the SDGs, which then can create the metrics that you need for your ESG reporting when your finance team or your marketing team or whoever's doing that reporting is producing your ESG reporting and disclosures. Because often what you're seeing now is greenwashing. You'll see companies saying, well, we're doing the SDGs without any real support for it. What sustainable project management really does is it drives the metrics and key reporting structures you need to feed into your reporting. Because often ESG reporting does not account for the day-to-day operations or the development of a project.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that where you led, and you mentioned Prince 2, where you led, Prince 2 has started to follow you now, because of course the latest edition of the Prince 2 handbook has a passing reference, and it really is just a passing reference to the Sustainable Development Goals, but they're there, and I think that's a big step forward. And it seems to me that you've got your P5 standard, which tells us what we should be aspiring to achieve, but you've also got your new practice guide, the 3rd edition, which is the latest guidance as to actually how we go about achieving that as project managers and as project professionals. But I suppose the question that some of the audience will still be wondering is why should they engage with these ideas? They've got a lot to do, whether it's as a junior project manager learning masses for whatever certification they may or may not choose to follow, to managing a bewildering array of factors in any project or program. And what you're saying is, hey, hold on a moment. There's a whole lot more to know and there's a whole lot more to do because we need to make a difference. So why do we need to do this? We understand that environment's important. We understand we need to be sustainable, but why is this part of project managers' responsibility?
So it's an interesting question. And the common question that we get is, we're already using PMBOK, or we already have a methodology. You know, and in our guide, we've developed PRISM, which is Projects Integrating Sustainable Methods. And what we often say is nobody's looking for PRISM per se. They're looking for improved methods and to infuse sustainability into their practices. So you can adopt PRISM outright, but what most organizations, what we really recommend is whatever you're using is likely working very well, but you need to infuse portions of our sustainability practices and the P5 standard into your day-to-day practices. One of the reasons that we like to say is, you know, we've heard for the past 15 or 20 years that project management is becoming more strategic. I mean, we're hearing that over and over, and it is. I think currently about 36% of the world's GDP is accounted for by projects, you know, small to large. And if you think about large infrastructure projects, building bridges, and that number is going to go to about 50% by 2030, which is a logical jump and extension of things that are happening with respect to climate change issues. Like if you think of the 2 hurricanes that hit the state of Florida in October and early November. Well, think of all the infrastructure that's going to need to be rebuilt. Those are large projects. So while project management has been getting more strategic, I'm not sure project managers have been getting more strategic along with it. So when you start talking about adding sustainability into your project practices, and when we talk about sustainability, keep in mind, it's not just people and planet. There's that third leg of it, which is prosperity. Okay. And it's really a matter of creating economic efficiencies. So, for example, if you're running an IT company with a huge server farm, you know, if you're looking to reduce emissions and using more energy efficient methods, you're not only helping reduce your energy consumption, you're saving a lot of money. Okay. If we think as a very obvious example, hotels were some of the first to really hop on board, so to speak. You know, 15 years ago, hotels would say, hey, if you want to use your towel again tomorrow, hang it up. Don't throw it on the floor, right? And it was their part of being very environmental and marketing it as we're going to save a ton of water and it'll be more environmental. Yeah, they did. And that is fantastic. And oh, by the way, collectively, they save billions in hydro and electricity costs. So really, it's not a one or the other. The return on investment for adding sustainability into your processes and practices is extremely high. I mean, it varies from industry to industry, but you can see immediate impact. And it's interesting from a personal perspective why somebody should add sustainability. I spoke at a conference at Arizona State University in Phoenix a couple of months ago, and they're one of our larger training partners. And a young project manager had just come through our course and their graduate program in project management asked me about how do I market myself with this, because you're not yet seeing requirements for sustainability in project management jobs. And my response was, in your interview, you're going to talk about all the skills you have and all the certifications you have, and they're going to be very comparable to other candidates. But then you're going to start talking about the sustainability piece and how that ties into stronger marketing, because most brands now are understanding that younger generations want to buy from companies that reflect their values. You're going to be talking about creating greater efficiencies in carbon reduction, digital transformation. It's sustainability is a huge fit with digital transformation. So as an individual project manager, you're going to have this layer of strategic abilities and visions that most other project managers will not have. So you'll have a leg up.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right. And it's similar in some ways to the argument about why engage with artificial intelligence, with even, going back a couple of years with actually understanding value management and benefits management. It's the fact that today it might not be a differentiator. Tomorrow it'll become a differentiator, and you will get bigger and better opportunities. In a few years' time, if you don't have these skills, you will be pushed to the back of the queue.
Exactly. And LinkedIn has our annual report on job trends. The two biggest skills in need right now are AI and green skills. And by 2040, they're each expected to grow by like 50, 60%. Yeah. And eventually, while sustainable project management is not being asked for now, it's going to be. Yeah. And more larger organizations are going to see not just the social benefit, as they will, and you're starting to see a lot more companies becoming more socially driven, but they're going to see the economic bottom line of this for the things that we've talked about, for consumers who want to represent their brand, from the efficiencies of savings. Like, think about it. It's sort of like a Lean Six Sigma type environment where you're reducing inefficiencies in your supply chain, for example. Like, one of the things we emphasize is buying locally in your procurement cycle as much as you can. We don't want you to degrade the quality of your products, but if you can find something of strong quality or equal quality on a local level, then your transportation emissions and your transportation costs go down so significantly that there's a huge ROI right there.
And you're feeding into your society. I had dinner recently with a bunch of my former colleagues, all experienced project managers of different specialisms that have been working, since the 90s. We were talking about our careers, and some people saw it as a load of short-term things that came and went, like ERP and deregulation and all of that. And others saw the same thing as being actually like a series of waves that have carried us up through our careers. The people who are ready to ride the wave up are the people who don't just get the interesting jobs, but they actually rise up in their career. So I think we've nailed that one.
And to your example, I mean, ERP, it was new for a while. That was just like like everybody's using SAP and Oracle in a large organization, and you have to have skills in that. Right.
And people say, well, it was just flavor of the month, but actually it was flavor of the month that is now just on the menu all the time.
Correct. It's not a trend anymore. Like, it was interesting. We always talk about trends versus transformation, right? And everything's trendy for a while, but the difference is it's easier to predict a trend. It's harder to predict what's going to have long-term transformation. And ERP was a long-term transformation, just as sustainability will be.
And actually, in some ways, for the same reason, it's created efficiencies, it's saved money, it's a better way of doing things. So we've made the case. So now, thinking about that project manager who's watching this video, they might be at the start of their career, but they may be just thinking, you know what, my career needs a bit of a boost. They want to up their game. So from your experience of talking to people and working with people, what are some of the practical steps that my audience can take to build sustainability, both into their professional practice, how they do things, but also into the projects they're working on today?
Sure. So one of the things that we really pride ourselves on at GPM is majority of our tools are free use.
Yeah.
They're not open source in the sense that you can't contribute to them, but they're all available for use. If you go to our website, for example, you can download the P5 standard at no cost. And that's really where we would recommend starting to dig in, so to speak, and understanding when we talk about the people, planet, profit, the process, the projects, all the different elements. We've spoken to some of them, like digital communication, local procurement, local economic impact, human rights and safety and things like that. Those are all elements that you can familiarize yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
There are training options available through our training partners or through trainings online. Our reference guide that Michael has referred to is a lot of academic guides, and they go for a couple $100. I think ours is like $19.95 right now on Amazon. It's very accessible. Our P5 impact analysis, which takes all of the elements of P5 and helps you with your client identify what risks you should be looking for and how to mitigate those risks, scoring them on a Likert scale of 1 to 5, and then when you put in the alleviated risk, how you would rescore it down. All of these things are free. Now, how do you use it on your projects? What we say is do it by stealth. You're not going to go to your PMO or your head of projects or portfolio, whoever it be, and say, hey, I'm going to start implementing this cool new concept on every single thing I do. They're going to be like, yeah, great. Don't have time for it. So pick a couple of elements that you think you can quickly adapt into your practice. I sort of like the Cotter model of change management with the quick wins. So if you wanted to focus in on procurement, for example, you can help with some writing of some criteria where you're putting a bit more emphasis on locality. If you're starting to take into account different materials in packaging, if you're in a consumer product type of environment, consumer packaging product. If you're working in an oil field, thinking about the different technology that you might use that creates less degradation or a smaller footprint from digging in an oil. There's been a lot of improvements recently where they don't have to dig as deep, or different methods. They're digging foot diameter holes instead of 12-foot diameter holes. So I would recommend starting by stealth, getting some wins, and then going to the rest of your organization saying, hey guys, I've been using this and it's resulted in these great impacts that we've had. What if we start to use this a little more throughout the organization and we get a few more people trained on this, and slowly but surely it starts to get adopted. So that's the bottom up approach. And at the same time, once your executives start to figure out what's going on, then it can become a bit more top down. And with most organizations, that's where that we've worked with, that approach has become very strong, and it's sort of met in the middle where they say, okay, yeah, executives are doing it. We've seen our executives have bought in. We've seen it at the grassroots level, or not grassroots, meaning more down at the project level.
Yeah.
And now, hey, let's flesh this out throughout the organization. Let's get more people trained. Let's bring consultants in. Let's get our people trained up to do this.
Yeah, so. And actually that puts you, having done that, in pole position to be an influencer.
Correct.
And I think one of the things I think is most important for project managers to learn about is benefits management, because
absolutely,
PMI very late to the game, but so have a lot of organizations, frankly, been late to the game. But if you're doing benefits management, the first step is always to identify the benefits. And I think it's not a big stretch to add potential community benefits, potential environmental benefits, and energy saving benefits into the benefits case. Absolutely.
And Prism, and a lot of what we talk about, is very similar to Prince too, and then it's very front end loaded. A lot of strong emphasis on the business case. So one of the other downloads we have is the sustainability management plan, which the P5 impact analysis feeds into. But it's exactly that. It's looking at the key benefits of the project. And you're right, PMI has been a bit late to it, but they've caught up. APMG has had great standards with this.
Yes.
Steve Jenner, a friend of mine, is one of the leading authorities for that. And we've adapted some of his ideas into the sustainability management plan as well, but really building out the economic and social benefits of these projects early on is key and integral, especially when you're going out to community stakeholders. For example, the example I used earlier, I'll use another example. We are in Canada right now looking to build a high-speed rail, where we're well behind Europe when it comes to our internal transportation systems, but a high-speed rail from Quebec City to Windsor, which is about 700 kilometers. And a lot of the current discussions around how do we get local communities that this train is going to go through on board, right? P5 is tailor-made to take into account those discussions, because it's going to be going through Indigenous communities. How does it impact them? What kind of local economic development is going to change? So, for example, if a city is now along that train corridor, is it become a more attractive place to live for people to commute 20 minutes on a high-speed rail versus an hour and a half on a drive, for example? So there's economic offshoot of building houses and homes near the new station. With the new houses and homes come restaurants, come shops. All of that local economic development is being built into the project planning and the original business case for the community stakeholders right now.
David, thank you. You've told us how people can learn from your materials, and you've told us about the stuff they can download and the training courses. What you didn't say is that there is, in fact, a free introductory training course on your website that people can take, which I can attest is a good little package, just gets you in the mood for learning more. So tell us where people can go to learn about this and how they can engage with GPM as a business and as an influential community, but also with you as an individual.
So our website is gpm.org. We're very happy. We just recently got that domain. It was greenprojectmanagement.org before, but now you can go to gpm.org. And again, we have all of our training partners listed there. We have our online courses listed there, and all of our standards like the P5 standard and the sustainability management plan, P5 impact analysis, etc. You can contact me at david.smyth@gpm.org. You can contact our regional directors who are listed on our website as well. We take emails. We're more than happy to speak to people. We also have an ambassadors group. You are able to become an ambassador with us. There is a fee involved, but it's fairly minimal. It actually gets you access to a free copy of our reference guide, and we have monthly roundtables on various topics where people from around the world come and interact. That's usually the last Tuesday of each month at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And, for example, the last one we talked about was trendy versus transformative. Where does sustainability fit in this? And every month we talk about a new idea. So that's another great way to engage with us. But we do consulting work. We do training. We speak at conferences on a regular basis. So we're always traveling and out and about and around. So
splendid. And again, if people just want to keep up to date with some of the ideas and as well as browsing the website, sign up for the newsletter
absolutely.
I'm not sure if it's weekly, but every time there's an article there that I know I want to read, and I'll just go to the website and read it. So
and we have
links
weekly
in
blogs. We have weekly blogs and communications.
So David,
follow us on LinkedIn.
David, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you very much for telling us about sustainable project management and why it's important and how people can get involved.
Thank you, Michael. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you.
Please do give us a thumbs up if you like this video. I'll be creating loads more great project management content, so please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of it. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.